In the glittering heart of Cresthaven, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds, and wealth wove the threads of power, I, Emily Stone, had carved a legacy from nothing. The elite circle of this city was a battlefield where alliances were forged in boardrooms and broken over whispered betrayals at galas. As the daughter of the Stone family, whose name once rivaled the titans of industry, I bore the weight of my grandfather's dreams, Genesis Capital, a beacon of innovation. Yet for 20 years, I poured my soul not into that legacy, but into a man, Ethan Grant, the illegitimate son of the Grant dynasty, who climbed from obscurity on the strength of my mind and heart. Our marriage was the envy of Cresthaven. With his sharp jaw and sharper ambition, Ethan wore the title of Mrs. Grant's husband like a crown, while I, the quiet strategist, wove the threads of his success. Behind every deal he signed, my calculations steadied the pen. Behind every speech he delivered, my words shaped the applause. The elite circle whispered that I had married for love, blind to the empire I built in his shadow. They didn't see the nights I spent poring over financial models, or the mornings I smoothed his doubts with plans that turned his dreams into reality. I believed in us, believed in him. But love, I learned, was a fragile thing, easily shattered by greed. On a rain-soaked evening, as I stood on the deck of our yacht, the truth crashed over me like the waves below. My lungs burned, water clawing at my throat, and Ethan stood on the shore, his silhouette cold and unmoving. Once warm with promises, his eyes were fixed on my cousin Claire, who clung to his arm, her smile a blade. "Stop pretending, Emily," he called, his voice cutting through the storm. "I gave you 20 years of wealth as Mrs. Grant." "That's enough. Claire is the one I love. She's the genius who built our empire." The words tore deeper than the cold. Claire, who had lived in our home since her family's ruin, who had mirrored my gestures and stolen my drafts, had claimed my place. But the sharpest pain came from another voice. Our son, Daniel, barely 19, his college sweater sodden as he stood beside his father. "Dad, Aunt Claire deserves you," he said, his tone earnest, as if I were already gone. "She's the one who cares about us. Mom would understand." His words were a betrayal I hadn't foreseen, a wound deeper than Ethan's cruelty. My son, whom I had cradled through fevers and guided through dreams, had chosen a lie over me. Fury choked me as much as the water. I had been the architect of their world for 20 years. Ethan's rise, Claire's schemes, even Daniel's future. I had sacrificed my ambitions and dimmed my light to let theirs shine. The elite circle, with its glittering facades, had never seen me, only the shadow I cast for others. As my vision darkened, I saw it all. The stolen ideas, the whispered plans, the empire I had built, now a throne for traitors. My last thought was not of love, but of rage. At myself for being so blind, and at them for taking everything. I died with my eyes wide open, suffocated by the weight of my unseen sacrifices. The waves closed over me, and Cresthaven's lights faded, but the fire in my chest burned on. This was not the end. It was the beginning of something sharper, something unforgiving. In that final moment, I swore. If fate gave me another chance, I would reclaim every piece of what was mine, and they would learn the cost of betraying Emily Stone. The air in the Stone family villa was thick with anticipation, the chandeliers casting a golden glow over Cresthaven's elite, gathered to witness a union that would reshape the city's power map. I stood at the center of the parlor, my heart hammering, not with the joy of a bride-to-be, but with the shock of a second life. Moments ago, I had died, drowning in betrayal, my lungs burning as Ethan Grant and my cousin Claire stole my world. Now I was here again, reborn on the day Ethan proposed, the day I had once thought marked our forever. With their polished smiles and calculating eyes, the elite circle watched, unaware that fate had rewritten my story. My father, his broad shoulders tense, stood beside me, his pride in our family's legacy, a legacy I had neglected for Ethan, etched in his furrowed brow. The room buzzed with whispers of the Grant-Stone alliance, a merger of ambition and intellect that would elevate both names in Cresthaven's ruthless hierarchy. But Ethan, resplendent in a tailored suit, stepped forward, his gaze not on me but past me, His eyes, once my anchor, were cold, sharp, with a certainty that chilled my blood. I knew that look. He, too, had been reborn, armed with memories of our past life, where he chose Claire over me. "Mr. Stone," Ethan said, his voice smooth but laced with disdain. "I've made a mistake. The one I love is Claire. Please, let me marry her." The room froze, gasps rippling through the crowd like a stone dropped in still water. My father's face flushed crimson, his hand clenching as if to strike. The elite circle leaned forward, scenting scandal, their whispers turning to murmurs of my humiliation. "Emily is dull." Ethan continued his glance at me with a blade. "Claire is my soulmate, the spark to my fire. Together, we'll forge a true empire." In my past life, those words would have shattered me. I would have begged, tears staining my silk gown, pleading for the love I thought we shared. But now, standing in the same gown, I felt no tears, only a spark of something new. Resolve, sharp and unyielding. The pain of Ethan's betrayal, of my son Daniel's voice urging his father toward Claire, burned in my chest. But it fueled me. This time, I would not be the fool. I would not let Cresthaven's elite see me break. My son, unborn in this timeline, deserved a mother who fought, not one who surrendered. My father's voice trembled with rage. "You dare!" he began, but I raised a hand, gentle but firm, silencing him. The room held its breath as I stepped forward, my heels clicking on the marble floor. Ethan's smirk faltered, his certainty wavering as I met his gaze, my eyes steady, unblinking. "Ethan Grant," I said, my voice clear, carrying to every corner of the parlor. "You speak of empires, but you forget who built yours. Claire may be your spark, but I was your foundation." A murmur swept through the crowd, surprise replacing pity. Ethan's jaw tightened, but I didn't stop. "I said you're free to choose," my tone calm, almost amused. "But choices have consequences, and Cresthaven never forgets." I nodded and turned to my father, whose anger had softened into confusion. "Let's not waste our evening, Dad. We have guests to entertain." As I moved to greet a stunned matriarch, I felt Ethan's stare, heavy with something new, uncertainty. At that moment, I understood that Ethan's rebirth had given him confidence, but mine had given me power. He thought he could rewrite our past and erase me for Claire, but he didn't know I remembered every lie, every stolen idea. Standing behind me, her delicate frame draped in a gown that mimicked mine, Claire watched with wide eyes, her fingers twitching. She thought she had won, but she didn't see the plan forming in my mind. A plan to dismantle their illusion, to reclaim my place in Cresthaven's elite circle. As I mingled, offering smiles to allies and rivals alike, my thoughts turned to Daniel, the son I would protect in this life. I had failed him in my past life, letting Ethan and Claire shape his heart. This time, I would build a legacy strong enough to shield him, one rooted not in a man's ambition but my own. The elite circle might now see me as the jilted fiancé, but soon they would know Emily Stone as a force no one could erase. The Genesis Capital Venture Summit loomed, and there I would begin to unravel Ethan's world, thread by treacherous thread. The Stone family villa, a fortress of marble and ambition in Cresthaven's elite circle, hummed with the aftermath of Ethan's betrayal. The guests had departed, their whispers of my humiliation trailing like smoke, but the air inside remained heavy, charged with the unspoken. I stood in the shadowed hallway, my silk gown discarded for a simple blouse, my heart a tangle of rage and resolve. Ethan's words, "Claire is my soulmate," echoed in my mind, but it was the memory of my past life, of drowning while he and Claire watched, that steeled me. I would not be the fool again in Cresthaven, where power was currency and loyalty a luxury. I moved toward Claire's room, drawn to understand the woman who had stolen my life. Her door was ajar, and her low and smug voice slipped through the crack like a serpent. "Ethan's mine now," she said, her words sharp with triumph. I mimicked Emily's style, her walk, her ideas. I tweaked her drafts from her laptop, and he thinks I'm a genius. Emily's just a doll. Pretty, clueless. Once I'm Mrs. Grant, the Stone legacy will be mine. Her laugh, sharp and cruel, pierced me, but it was her following words that froze my blood. My parents lost everything to the stones. Living here, watching Emily shine, I swore I'd take it all. Claire's backstory unspooled in my mind, a thread I had ignored in my past life. Her family, once minor players in Cresthaven's elite, had crumbled under bad investments, their name erased from the city's gilded ledgers. Out of pity, my father took Claire in when she was 12, raising her as a sister to me. I had shared my home and my dreams, never seeing the envy that festered in her. She had studied me, not out of admiration, but to usurp me, her charm a mask for ambition. She had taken Ethan, my son Daniel, and the empire I built in my past life. Now she thought her victory was assured. The weight of her betrayal pressed against my chest, mingling with the ache of Daniel's voice from that other life. Aunt Claire deserves you, Dad. I had failed him then, blinded by love for Ethan, but in this life, I would protect his future, unborn though he was. Cresthaven's elite might see me as the jilted fiancé, but I was the architect of Ethan's rise and would reclaim my work. Claire's theft was not just personal. It was a challenge to the Stone legacy, one I would answer at the Genesis Capital Venture Summit. Footsteps broke my thoughts. Ethan appeared, his face twisted with rage, his suit rumpled as if he'd chased me through the villa. "Emily!" he snarled, grabbing my wrist. "Don't you dare touch Claire! Her talent is beyond you. She's the future of our empire." Burning with reborn certainty, his eyes saw only the lie Claire had spun. In his past life, he had stood by as I drowned. Now, he defended a thief. The irony stung, but I forced a smile, my voice calm. Talent, Ethan, or theft? We'll see at the summit. His grip tightened, then faltered at my composure. "You're jealous?" he spat, but his voice wavered, a crack in his arrogance. I pulled free, stepping back. "Jealousy is for those who have nothing to lose," I said. "I'm not that woman anymore." I turned, leaving him in the hallway, his shadow long and unsteady. Claire's voice drifted again, oblivious to my presence. "Emily will crumble." "She always does." My smile deepened, cold and sharp. She didn't know I was reborn, armed with every secret she thought buried. In my room, I opened my laptop, pulling up Claire's stolen drafts. My Solaris project, a blueprint for a revolutionary platform. I had designed it in my past life, only to see it twisted into Claire's codex. The summit was 3 days away, Cresthaven's elite gathering to crown the next visionary. Claire would present my work, Ethan at her side, but I would be there, ready to expose her. The elite circle thrived on spectacle, and I would give them one they'd never forget. As I worked, my thoughts drifted to Daniel, the son I would raise differently this time. I had let Ethan shape him in my past life, but now I would build a legacy strong enough to shield him from Cresthaven's cruelty. The Stone name, my grandfather's dream, would rise again, not through Ethan's ambition, but through my own. Claire thought she had won, but had only awakened a force she couldn't control. The summit would be my first move, the beginning of her unraveling, and Ethan's. The Stone family villa was silent, its marble halls cloaked in moonlight, starkly contrasting the chaos of Ethan's betrayal hours earlier. I sat on the edge of my bed, the weight of my reborn life pressing against my chest. Cresthaven's elite circle, with its glittering facades and ruthless ambitions, had branded me the jilted fiancé, a footnote in Ethan Grant's ascent. But I was no longer the woman who drowned in their whispers, nor the wife who built an empire for a man who loved another. Claire's smug confession, her theft of my ideas, her envy rooted in her family's fall, had ignited a fire in me. Yet, as I traced the edges of my mother's photograph on the nightstand, it was not rage, but grief that threatened to unravel me. My mother's smile, frozen in silver, reminded me of the legacy I had forsaken. She had been the heart of Genesis Capital, my grandfather's chosen heir, her vision shaping Cresthaven's skyline before illness stole her too soon. In my past life, I had turned away from her dreams, consumed by love for Ethan, believing his promises would honor our family. I had been wrong. The elite circle, where power was won through cunning and lost through naivety, had no place for such blindness. My mother's eyes in the photograph seemed to plead, "Don't let it happen again." The deepest wound, though, was not Ethan's betrayal or Claire's theft, but the memory of my son, Daniel. In that other life at 19, he had stood beside his father as I drowned, his voice steady. "Aunt Claire deserves you, Dad." The words cut deeper now than the water ever had. I had cradled Daniel through sleepless nights and taught him to dream beyond Cresthaven's gilded cages, yet he had chosen Claire's lies over me. Was it my fault? Had I been so consumed by Ethan that I failed to shield him from the elite circle's poison? The thought was a knife twisting with every heartbeat. In this life, Daniel was unborn, a future I could still shape. I pressed a hand to my stomach, imagining the child he might become. This time, I would build a legacy strong enough to protect him, not through Ethan's ambition, but my own. The stone name, my mother's dream, would be his shield against Cresthaven's treachery. But the fear lingered. Could I rewrite his fate, or would the elite circle claim him as it had me? 3 days away, the Genesis Capital Venture Summit would be my first step, a chance to reclaim my work and prove I was more than the shadow they saw. A soft knock broke my thoughts. My father stood in the doorway, his face etched with guilt. "Emily," he said, voice rough, "I failed you today. I should have thrown Ethan out. He had been my rock in my past life. But I had pushed him away, chasing Ethan's approval. Now I saw the toll my choices had taken. His shoulders slumped, his pride bruised by Cresthaven's judgment. "I said you didn't fail me, Dad," rising to meet him. "I was blind before. Not anymore." He hesitated, then handed me a small journal, its leather worn. "Your mother's," he said. "She wrote about Genesis and her plans for you." I opened it, and her elegant script was a lifeline. "Emily will carry our light." Tears pricked my eyes. In my past life, I had ignored this journal, but now it was a map to redemption. "She believed in you," my father said. "So do I." His faith, a rare gift in Cresthaven's cutthroat world, steadied me. "We'll rebuild, Dad," I said. "For her. For us." As he left, I turned to my laptop, pulling up the Solaris project. My stolen blueprint, now Claire's codex. The summit would draw Cresthaven's elite, their eyes hungry for the next prodigy. Claire would present my work, Ethan at her side, but I had a plan. My uncle, Luke Rivers, Genesis Capital's silent force, had supported me from afar in my past life, his illness keeping him overseas. I didn't know if he was in Cresthaven now, but his influence lingered in the summit's prestige. The elite circle would see the truth if I could reach him or expose Claire's fraud. I closed the journal, my mother's words echoing. Carry our light. For her, Daniel, and myself, I would face the summit not as Ethan's discarded fiancé, but as Emily Stone, heir to a legacy no one could steal. Claire thought she had broken me, but had only forged a blade. In 3 days, Cresthaven would learn what happened when a shadow entered the light. The Genesis Capital Venture Summit glittered under Cresthaven's skyline, a grand ballroom transformed into a coliseum for the elite circle's ambitions. Chandeliers cast prisms over tailored suits and sequined gowns, but the air crackled with more than opulence. Power hung in the balance, and every smile hid a calculation. I stood at the crowd's edge, my navy dress understated yet sharp, a deliberate contrast to the ostentatious displays around me. Cresthaven's elite, from tech moguls to old money dynasties, whispered my name with pity. Emily Stone, the jilted fiancée, daring to show her face. Their scorn was a weight, but I carried a heavier one. The memory of my past life, drowning while Ethan and Claire stole my world, and my son Daniel's voice betrayed me. 3 days had passed since Claire's smug confession, and her theft of my Solaris project laid bare. Her envy, born of her family's fall and years in my shadow, had fueled her deception, but I was no longer the blind wife who trusted too easily. My mother's journal, pages filled with dreams for Genesis Capital, had rekindled my purpose. I would reclaim my legacy for her and Daniel's unborn future. The summit was my stage, and Cresthaven would see me not as a victim, but as a force. Ethan and Claire held court near the stage, their confidence a beacon for sycophants. Claire's gown, a near replica of one I'd worn in my past life, shimmered as she presented the codex, my stolen Solaris, repackaged as her genius. Ethan, his arm around her, radiated triumph, his reborn certainty blinding him to the truth. The elite circle fawned their applause, a chorus of ignorance. Claire Stone, a prodigy, they murmured. Ethan chose well. My fingers tightened around my clutch, but I kept my face serene, my heart steady with the plan I'd honed. The vice president of Genesis Capital, a silver-haired titan named Harold Voss, took the stage, his voice booming. Tonight, we celebrate innovation. Miss Claire Stone's codex captivated our special guest. Mr. K cameras flashed as Claire beamed, Ethan lifting his chin with pride. I felt a pang, not of jealousy, but of loss for the years I'd poured into Ethan's rise, only to be erased. Daniel's face flickered in my mind, his betrayal a wound I vowed to heal by protecting his future. This moment was for him too. Then Voss's following words shattered the room's rhythm. We have an unexpected request. Miss Emily Stone is invited to join the pitch as her project, Solaris, shares an identical framework with the Codex. A collective gasp swept through the crowd, heads whipping toward me. Ethan's smile froze, his eyes narrowing with reborn suspicion. Claire's hand trembled, her flawless facade cracking. The elite circle buzzed, their pity turning to intrigue. A scandal? A showdown? I felt their stares, but my focus was on the stage, where Voss waited, his expression unreadable. My father, seated nearby, gripped his chair, his face a mix of pride and fear. In my past life, he had watched me fade. Now he saw me rise. I gave him a subtle nod, drawing strength from his faith, and from my uncle, Luke Rivers, whose silent support in my past life had cleared my path. Was he Mr. K watching from afar? I didn't know, but his legacy in Genesis Capital gave me ground to stand on. I stepped forward, my heels echoing in the sudden hush, each step in defiance of Cresthaven's judgment. Claire recovered first, her voice trembling with feigned hurt. "Emily, why would you steal my work?" she said, tears glistening. The crowd murmured, some with sympathy, others eager for drama. Ethan moved to her side, his glare burning. "You're desperate," he hissed, low enough for only me to hear. "Claire's brilliance outshines you. I would have crumbled under their accusations in my past life. But now I saw their fear, the fear of a thief and a fool who had bet on the wrong soulmate." I met Claire's eyes, then Ethan's, my voice calm but carrying. "Words prove nothing," I said, addressing the room. "Since Mr. K is watching, let him pose a question, a pressure test. Then we'll see who the creator and thief are." The elite circle leaned forward, their whispers a tide of anticipation. Claire's face paled, her fingers twitching, while Ethan's jaw tightened, his certainty shaken. Voss nodded, a spark of respect in his eyes. "Agreed," he said. "Mr. K will present his question." As the giant screen behind us flickered to life, I felt the weight of my past life lift. I was ready for my mother, whose dreams I'd neglected, for Daniel, whose future I'd protect, for myself, whose light had been dimmed too long. Cresthaven's elite would witness the truth, and Claire's house of lies would crumble under the spotlight. The Genesis Capital Venture Summit pulsed with tension, Cresthaven's elite circle poised on the edge of their velvet seats, their eyes darting between me and Claire on the brightly lit stage. The grand ballroom, a glittering arena of power, seemed to shrink as the giant screen flickered, signaling Mr. K's imminent question. Tall, good navy dresses, quiet defiance against Claire's shimmering gown. A gown stolen from my past life's wardrobe, just like her codex was stolen from my Solaris. The elite circle's whispers, scandal, showdown, faded as I anchored myself in the memory of my mother's journal, her words urging me to carry her light. I was ready for her, for my unborn son Daniel, whose future I vowed to shield from Cresthaven's treachery. Claire's tearful accusation, "Emily stole my work," still hung in the air, her trembling voice a performance honed by years of envy. Raised in my shadow after her family's ruin, she had coveted my place, her charm a veneer for ambition. At her side, Ethan glared at me, his reborn certainty closing his eyes to her lies. In my past life, he had watched me drown. Now he defended a thief. The pain of his betrayal, of Daniel's voice siding with Claire, fueled me. This stage was my chance to reclaim what was mine, not just for me, but for the son I would raise to know truth over lies. Harold Voss, the summit's host, cleared his throat. Mr. K's question, he announced, as the screen displayed a complex challenge. Optimize a scalable data architecture for real-time analytics under constrained resources. The elite circle leaned forward, their murmurs a tide of anticipation. Claire's face drained of color, her fingers twitching. She opened her mouth, but her response was a jumble of buzzwords, her logic unraveling like a thread. It's a bold concept, she stammered but needed validation. The crowd shifted, sensing weakness. I stepped to the whiteboard, marker in hand, my heart steady despite the weight of their stares. In my past life, I had designed Solaris in obscurity, my brilliance buried under Ethan's name. Now, I broke down the question across 3 dimensions: core logic, technical constraints, and practical scalability, sketching 3 optimization strategies precisely. My voice, clear and unwavering, filled the room. This solution balances efficiency and adaptability, ensuring robust analytics even under stress. The elite circle's murmurs turned to nods, their pity morphing into respect. I turned to the screen, where Solaris and the Kodiaks were displayed side by side, their frameworks identical. I said one more thing, pointing to 3 data traps I had embedded in Solaris, deliberate flaws designed to expose fraud. These traps, hidden in financial cycles, would destabilize any stolen project. An actual creator would know them. A thief wouldn't. Claire's eyes widened, her facade crumbling. I explained each trap's mechanism, my words a scalpel cutting through her lies. The crowd gasped as submission dates flashed. Solaris, 3 weeks ago. The Kodiaks, 3 days ago. Ethan staggered, his face ashen, his reborn confidence shattered. Claire swayed, her tears no longer convincing. The elite circle erupted, their whispers now a storm. She stole it. Emily's the genius. In the audience, my father gripped his chair, his pride a beacon. I thought of my uncle, Luke Rivers, Genesis Capital's silent force, whose support in my past life had cleared my path. Was he Mr. K? The answer came as the screen shifted, revealing submission logs. Miss Stone's Solaris predates the Codex, Voss declared. The evidence is clear. Claire's voice broke, a desperate plea. Emily, I didn't mean... But I cut her off, my gaze cold. You meant to take everything, I said, loud enough for the elite to hear. You took my ideas, my style, my life. But Cresthaven sees you now. Ethan moved to shield her, but his eyes betrayed doubt, the first crack in his delusion. The crowd's applause for me was a roar, but I felt no triumph, only a quiet resolve. Daniel's future, my mother's legacy, depended on this victory, but it was only the beginning. As I stepped back, Voss raised a hand. Mr. K has a final statement, he said. The screen flickered again, and I braced myself. The elite circle held its breath, Cresthaven's power shifting under the spotlight. For the first time, I felt the weight of my light, not Ethan's shadow, not Claire's mirror, but Emily Stone's truth, blazing for all to see. The Genesis Capital Venture Summit hummed with shock, Cresthaven's elite circle reeling from the exposure of Claire's theft. The ballroom's chandeliers cast jagged light over faces frozen in awe, their whispers a storm. Emily Stone, the true genius. I stood on the stage, my navy dresses starkly contrasted with the chaos, my heart pounding not with triumph, but with the weight of my mother's legacy reclaimed. Claire, her stolen gown dimmed by defeat, swayed beside Ethan, her tearful facade shattered. Ethan's face was a mask of ash, his reborn certainty crumbling under the truth of my Solaris. My work, not hers. The elite circle, once pitying me as the jilted fiancé, now watched with a mix of respect and fear. In my past life, I had drowned, betrayed by Ethan, Claire, and my son Daniel, whose voice had urged his father toward her. That pain, sharp as ever, drove me now. To protect Daniel's unborn future, to honor my mother's dream for Genesis Capital. Claire's envy, rooted in her family's ruin and years in my shadow, had led her to steal my ideas. But her lies had unraveled under Cresthaven's spotlight. The giant screen still displayed the submission logs. Solaris, 3 weeks ago. The Kodiaks, 3 days ago. The evidence was undeniable, and the elite circle's judgment was swift. Harold Voss, the summit's host, raised a hand, his voice cutting through the din. "Mr. K has a final statement." The crowd hushed, eyes locked on the screen. My pulse quickened. In my past life, my uncle, Luke Rivers, had been Genesis Capital's silent force, supporting me from afar while battling illness overseas. I had sensed his presence in Mr. K's question, but certainty eluded me. The screen flickered, and a silver-masked figure appeared, his eyes piercing yet familiar. Then, with a slow gesture, he removed the mask, revealing a pale, refined face. Luke Rivers, my uncle. The ballroom gasped, Cresthaven's elite recognizing the reclusive power behind Genesis Capital. In the audience, my father stood, his mouth agape, pride and disbelief warring in his eyes. Ethan staggered, his hands trembling as if struck by lightning. Claire's knees buckled, her defeat absolute. Luke's voice, soft but commanding, filled the room. "Emily," he said, his gaze settling on me, heavy with regret. "I'm sorry I returned too late. In your past life, I watched from a distance, unable to intervene. This time, I'm here." Tears pricked my eyes, not from weakness, but from the weight of his words. In my past life, after Luke's death, I had found letters among his belongings, notes of encouragement, quiet interventions that cleared obstacles I never saw. He had been my unseen ally, and I had failed to honor him. Now, his presence was a lifeline, tying me to my mother's legacy. "You were never late," I said, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. "You're here now." Luke turned to the crowd, his tone resolute. He declared that Genesis Capital will fully fund Miss Emily Stone's Solaris project. "And I will transfer 30% of my shares to my niece Emily, effective immediately." The elite circle erupted, their murmurs a tidal wave of shock and envy. 30% of Genesis Capital was a fortune, a power shift that redrew Cresthaven's hierarchy. My father's eyes shone with tears, his faith in me vindicated. For Daniel, whose future I would shield, this was a foundation no one could steal. Claire's fate was sealed as Voss added, "Miss Claire Stone faces plagiarism charges, and Genesis Capital has referred her case to legal authorities." The elite circle's whispers turned venomous, their scorn now aimed at her. Claire's face crumpled, and her ambition was reduced to ash. In Cresthaven, where reputation was currency, her career was over. Her envy had led her to a public fall. Ethan moved to shield her, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt, his reborn dream unraveling. He had backed a fraud, and the elite circle would not forget. I stepped back, the stage lights warm on my face, but my thoughts were with Daniel. I had let Ethan shape him in my past life, but now I would build a legacy to guide him, through truth, not lies. Luke's gift was more than shares. It was a charge to carry my mother's light, to rebuild the Stone name. The elite circle watched me, not as a victim, but as a rising power. Ethan's voice, hoarse, broke the silence. He said this wasn't over, but it was a hollow threat, drowned by the crowd's applause. As I left the stage, my father met me, his embrace fierce. "Your mother would be proud," he whispered. I nodded, clutching the memory of her journal. Luke's image lingered on the screen, his eyes promising more. Cresthaven's elite circle had witnessed my truth, but this was only the beginning. Claire was broken, Ethan shaken, but I was starting to reshape the world they thought they owned. The Stone family villa loomed in the pre-dawn hush, its marble facade a silent witness to the storm that had swept through Cresthaven's elite circle. Hours earlier, at the Genesis Capital Venture Summit, I had unmasked Claire's theft, reclaiming my Solaris project and my mother's legacy under the gaze of the city's power brokers. Uncle Luke's revelation as Mr. K and his gift of 30% of Genesis Capital's shares had redrawn the elite's hierarchy, branding me a force, not a victim. Yet, as I stepped into the villa's foyer, my navy dress still crisp from the stage, it was not triumph, but a heavy calm that settled in my chest. The battle was far from over. Cresthaven thrived on reputation, and Claire's public fall, her Kodiaks exposed as my stolen work, her career now entangled in plagiarism charges, had turned the elite's whispers venomous. Her envy, born of her family's ruin and years coveting my place, had led her to this ruin. But the deepest scars were personal. Ethan's betrayal, watching me drown in my past life, and my son Daniel's voice siding with Claire. In this life, Daniel was unborn, a future I vowed to protect with a legacy built on truth. Tonight, I would sever the ties that had bound me to betrayal. My father met me at the door, his face etched with exhaustion and pride. "You were brilliant, Emily," he said, his voice rough. In my past life, I had pushed him away, chasing Ethan's approval. But now, his faith anchored me. Before I could respond, a wail echoed from the living room. My aunt, Claire's mother, leaped from the couch, her face streaked with tears. "Emily, you monster!" she shrieked. "You framed our Claire! She's pure, innocent!" My uncle, red-faced, joined her. "You've always been cunning, jealous of Claire's light. You set her up to steal Ethan." The accusation stung, a twisted echo of my past life's blindness. Claire had lived in our home since her family's collapse, raised as my sister. Yet her parents had nurtured her envy, blaming the stones for their fall. My father trembled, his voice rising. "How dare you twist this? Claire stole Emily's work." He slammed a stack of papers onto the coffee table, a termination agreement, severing ties with their family. In Cresthaven, where loyalty was a fragile currency, this was a death sentence to their social standing. I stepped forward, my gaze steady. "You raised Claire to covet what wasn't hers," I said, my voice low but cutting. "She didn't just steal my work. She stole my life, my husband, my son." The mention of Daniel tightened my throat. I had failed him in my past life, letting Ethan and Claire shape his heart. I would build a world where he'd never know their lies. My aunt flinched, but her defiance held. "Claire helped you," she spat. "She praised you to Ethan and copied your style to make him notice you. Without her, he'd never have looked at you." The truth, warped by her desperation, was a blade. My so-called love with Ethan had been a mirage orchestrated by Claire's manipulation. I had been their pawn in Cresthaven's elite circle, where alliances were built on deception. But no longer. "Helped me?" I said, my voice icy. "She used me, and you enabled her. The elite see her for what she is now, a thief." My uncle lunged toward my father, but I stepped between them. "Enough," I said. "This ends tonight." Footsteps on the stairs drew my eyes. Claire descended, her face pale as ash, her summit gown discarded for a plain sweater. She stopped before me, eyes brimming with tears. "Emily, I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to hurt you." Those tears had fooled me in my past life, but now I saw the calculation beneath them. Her envy had driven her to take everything, my ideas, family, and identity. "You meant every step," I said, my tone flat. "You thought you could erase me, but Cresthaven knows the truth." She flinched, her mask slipping. The elite circle's scorn, coupled with legal charges, had stripped her of power. My father nodded to security guards waiting in the shadows. "Escort them out," he said. My aunt wailed, clutching at my father, but he shoved her back. "You're no longer family," he said, his voice breaking. The guards moved, dragging Claire and her parents toward the door. "Emily, you'll pay for this!" my aunt screamed. But her words were hollow, lost in Cresthaven's unforgiving tide. The villa fell silent, the weight of severance settling like dust. My father sank onto the couch, his face in his hands. "I should have protected you sooner," he said. I knelt beside him, touching his shoulder. "You did, Dad. We're free now." His eyes met mine, guilt softening to resolve. For my mother, whose journal had guided me. For Daniel, whose future I would shape. For us, the stones. I felt closure. The elite circle would talk, but their whispers no longer defined me. As dawn broke, I stood by the window, the city's skyline a canvas of possibility. Luke's support, my father's faith, and my strength had set me on this path. Claire was gone, Ethan shaken, but Cresthaven's game was far from over. I was Emily Stone, and would build a legacy no one could break. Cresthaven's skyline glittered with ambition, its elite circle abuzz with whispers of my triumph at the Genesis Capital Venture Summit. I had unmasked Claire's theft days ago, reclaiming my Solaris project, and securing Uncle Luke's support, 30% of Genesis Capital's shares. a seismic shift in the city's power grid. Claire's career shattered by plagiarism charges had vanished from the elite's gaze, her envy-fueled schemes reduced to a cautionary tale. Yet, as I stood in my office at Solaris Technologies, the city's pulse thrumming beyond the glass, my heart carried a quieter weight. The memory of my past life, Ethan's betrayal, my son Daniel's voice siding with Claire, drove me to build a legacy that would shield Daniel's unborn future from Cresthaven's cruelty. Ethan, desperate to reclaim his fading star, had launched Skynet, a social media platform he touted as revolutionary. The elite circle, ever hungry for spectacle, watched closely, but I knew the truth. Skynet was built on a discarded Solaris draft, riddled with flaws I had abandoned long ago. Before her fall, Claire had salvaged it, tweaking it to dazzle Ethan's reborn ego. I had anticipated this, embedding a backdoor in the original architecture, a data sink that would crash Skynet at 500,000 users, funneling its data to Solaris. In Cresthaven, where innovation was king, I played chess while Ethan played checkers. The night of Skynet's launch, Ethan hosted a lavish banquet at the Cresthaven Grand Hotel, a 5-star shrine to the elite's excesses. I attended to my father at my side, and his presence was a reminder of our renewed bond. The ballroom buzzed with celebrities and tycoons, their applause for Ethan a hollow echo of his past glory. He stood on stage, champagne in hand, his suit masking the strain in his eyes. Worn and subdued, Claire clung to his arm, her disgrace a shadow over her forced smile. Tonight, Ethan declared that Skynet would redefine connection. And I thank the one who showed me my true path. His gaze locked on me, his words a barbed taunt. Emily, without you, I soar higher. The elite circle stirred, their eyes flicking to me, expecting a reaction. I would have crumbled in my past life, but now I raised my glass, my smile serene. To heights, Ethan, I said, my voice carrying. My father's hand tightened on his chair, pride in his eyes. I counted silently for Daniel, whose future I would forge. 3, 2, 1. The digital counter behind Ethan ticked to 500,000 users, and chaos erupted. A sharp notification pierced the room, every phone buzzing as Skynet crashed, its app blacking out across devices. Gasps turned to murmurs as the screen switched to the Solaris logo, a message blazing. Skynet has collapsed. Solaris is live. Migrate with one click. Your data is preserved. The elite circle's shock was palpable, their whispers now a tide. Emily did this. She outplayed him. Ethan slammed his glass to the floor, shards scattering, his face contorted. Emily! He roared, lunging toward me. Only security blocked him. I rose, taking the stage with measured steps, the microphone cool in my hand. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice clear, I'm Emily Stone, CEO of Solaris Technologies. I thank Mr. Grant for his enthusiastic marketing of our platform. Laughter rippled through the crowd, the elite's allegiance shifting like sand. My eyes met Ethan's, his fury starkly contrasting my calm. You said you'd soar without me, I continued, tilting my head. But you forgot, wings don't fly without a spine. The crowd erupted, their applause a thunderclap. Claire swayed, her pride extinguished, her role in Skynet's failure a final nail in her coffin. My father stood, clapping fiercely, his faith a beacon. I thought of Luke, whose shares had empowered me, and my mother, whose journal had guided me. For Daniel, I had turned Ethan's hubris into my victory, ensuring a future where he'd know strength, not betrayal. I had played my hand perfectly in Cresthaven, where power rewarded the ruthless. As I stepped down, my assistant whispered, Blaze Ventures is moving against Ethan. Liam Chen, once Ethan's rival, had watched my summit triumph and allied with me, his respect for my strategy unspoken but clear. Skynet's collapse triggered a bet-on clause, demanding Ethan repay triple the investment or lose his company. His properties were already freezing, his elite status crumbling. The elite circle's whispers followed me out. Emily Stone, the new titan. I glanced back at Ethan, his figure small against the Solaris logo, and felt nothing but resolve. The game was mine now, and Cresthaven would see how far I could rise. Cresthaven's elite circle buzzed with the aftershocks of Skynet's collapse. my Solaris platform rising like a phoenix. The city's skyline, a jagged crown of ambition, reflected my new reality. Emily Stone, no longer the jilted fiancée, but a titan reshaping the elite's power grid. Uncle Luke's shares in Genesis Capital and my father's unwavering faith had bolstered me. But my ruthlessness, honed by the memory of Ethan's betrayal and my son Daniel's voice siding with Claire in my past life, drove me. Claire's career buried under plagiarism charges was a fading echo. Her envy-fueled schemes no match for Cresthaven's unforgiving tide. Now, I turned my sights to the Grant Empire, its patriarch, Gordon Grant, my final target. The meeting was set at the Jade Tea House, a private sanctuary where Cresthaven's elite sealed deals away from prying eyes. I arrived in a tailored blazer, my calm exterior masking the storm within. I would dismantle the Grant's legacy for Daniel, whose unborn future I vowed to shield, and for my mother, whose journal had rekindled my purpose. Gordon, Ethan's father, sat in the seat of honor, his silver hair and sharp eyes a testament to decades of dominance. He poured tea with deliberate grace, but his smile was a blade. "Emily," he said, "you've made waves. Ethan wronged you, and you've struck back. Let's talk." In my past life, I studied Story Group, Grant's conglomerate, to secure Ethan's place, memorizing every ledger and every dirty secret. Now, those secrets were my weapons. I slid a file across the table, its pages detailing 3 years of financial irregularities, backdoor deals, executive bribes, and illicit operations tied to Gordon himself. His hand paused, the teapot trembling. "Retire," I said, my voice steady. "Transfer your shares to me and this stays locked away. Your family keeps its dignity. Or I go public and Story Group sinks, leaving you and your heir, Gavin, to Cresthaven's wolves." Gordon's face reddened, veins pulsing. In Cresthaven, where reputation was currency, my threat was a guillotine. "You dare?" he growled, tea splashing onto the table. I leaned forward, unflinching. "This isn't a threat, Gordon. It's a negotiation. You've seen what I did to Ethan. Imagine what I'll do to you." His eyes narrowed, calculating. He knew my summit triumph, knew Skynet's crash was my design. In my past life, I had been docile, but now I was a predator, and Cresthaven's elite circle respected strength. He slumped back, voice hoarse. "I need time." I stood, leaving the file. 24 hours, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Outside, Uncle Luke waited by the car, his frail frame belying his power. "Gordon's a fox," he warned. "Pushing him is risky." I shook my head. In Cresthaven, hesitation is death. He fears for Gavin's future, not his own. Luke's eyes softened, proud yet wary, a reminder of his past life's support, letters I'd found after his death, guiding me unseen. The next move came from Liam Chen, once Ethan's rival, now my ally. At a discreet cafe, he handed me a contract. Ethan's Skynet debt, sold to me by Blaze Ventures. "You outplayed him," Liam said, his tone laced with admiration. "I crushed him once, but you buried him." In Cresthaven's cutthroat game, Liam's shift from foe to partner was strategic, his respect earned by my ruthlessness. The debt gave me control of Ethan's company, and its assets are now mine. Ethan's properties were frozen, his elite status a memory, the elite circle's whispers now hailing me. Emily Stone, the new power. Back at Solaris Technologies, I reviewed the contracts, and my thoughts drifted to Daniel. I had let Ethan shape him in my past life, but now I have built a legacy to guide him. Through strength, not betrayal. My mother's journal, open on my desk, urged me to carry her light. Gordon's message arrived at dawn. I agree. 3 words, sealing Story Group's surrender. My father, joining me in the office, read the message, his face alight with pride. He said, "You're your mother's daughter," his hand on mine. In my past life, I had failed them. Now, I honored them. The elite circle's reaction was swift, their murmurs reshaping Cresthaven's narrative. Emily Stone, devourer of empires, Story Group's shares, and Genesis Capital's made me untouchable. Unaware of his father's defeat, Ethan scrambled for scraps, his desperation a faint echo in the city's pulse. Claire's absence left a void, her disgrace a lesson in ambition's cost. As I signed the transfer papers, I felt a quiet resolve. I had turned betrayal into dominion for Daniel and my family, and Cresthaven would never forget it. The rain draped Cresthaven's cemetery in a soft, gray shroud, muting the city's relentless pulse. I knelt before my mother's headstone, white chrysanthemums glowing against the damp earth, their petals trembling in the drizzle. Her etched smile anchored me, a beacon amidst the elite circle's whispers that now crowned me a titan. Days ago, I had orchestrated Skynet's collapse, claimed Ethan's debt, and forced Gordon Grant to surrender Story Group's shares, cementing my dominion with Genesis Capital's power. Yet, as I traced her name, grief, not triumph, stirred within me. Grief for the woman I'd been in my past life, drowned by Ethan's betrayal and my son Daniel's voice. Aunt Claire deserves you, Dad. Claire's ruin was absolute. Her plagiarism charges a death sentence in Cresthaven's unforgiving hierarchy. Her envy, born of her family's fall, had driven her to steal my Solaris, but the elite circle's scorn had buried her. Stripped of his empire, Ethan was a shadow of the man I'd loved for 20 years. His properties frozen, and his name erased from the elite's gilded ledgers. My victory was complete, but the cemetery's silence forced me to confront the cost. Daniel's betrayal, deeper than Ethan's, haunted me. I had failed him in that other life, letting Ethan and Claire shape his heart. Now, unborn, he was a future I vowed to protect with a legacy of truth, yet doubt gnawed. Could I rewrite his fate? Footsteps squelched behind me, heavy and deliberate. I didn't turn. Ethan's presence, once my world, was now a faint disturbance. He stood under a tattered umbrella, gaunt and hollow, his suit soaked, rain mingling with the red in his eyes. The elite circle's judgment had broken him, and his reborn arrogance was reduced to desperation. "Emily," he rasped, voice cracking, "I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have believed Claire's lies. I shouldn't have let you drown." His words, raw and trembling, stirred the ashes of my past life. I remembered the nights I'd built his empire, the mornings I'd soothed his doubts, only to be discarded for Claire's stolen brilliance. I rose, facing him, my mother's headstone between us. "Wrong?" I said, my voice steady and cold. "You didn't just believe her, Ethan. You chose her over me, over our son." The mention of Daniel tightened my throat. In my past life, I had let Ethan's ambition blind me, failing to shield Daniel from Cresthaven's poison. Now, I would be his shield. Ethan's umbrella fell, rain drenching him as he stepped closer. "I thought this life was my chance to fix it," he said, tears or rain streaking his face. "But I was blind. Every success I claimed, Skynet, Story Group, it was you. Without you, I'm nothing." His knees buckled, splashing mud as he sank before the grave. "Please help me, Emily. For the 20 years we shared, for Daniel who isn't here yet, I'll cut Claire off, give up everything. Give me one chance." In my past life, his pleas might have swayed me, but now I saw the truth. His regret was for his fall, not my pain. Cresthaven's elite circle, where power rewarded the ruthless, had no place for his weakness. I thought of my father, whose faith had steadied me, and Uncle Luke, whose shares had empowered me. Their support, not Ethan's hollow promises, had rebuilt me. "Daniel," I said, my voice like ice, "was the son you let Claire corrupt. You dared to use his name after he urged you to marry her as I drowned." Ethan's face crumpled, his hands clutching the mud. "I was a fool," he sobbed. "When you exposed those traps at the summit, I should have known. After Skynet crashed, I saw it. Every step. You were the spine." His admission, stripped of pride, was too late. I pulled a document from my bag, a termination notice for his company, now mine through Liam Chen's debt transfer. "You're fired," I said, tossing it into the mud. "Take the severance and leave Cresthaven. You're nothing to me now." He stared at the sodden paper, ink bleeding, his despair a mirror of my past life's pain. "What did you do?" he whispered, voice breaking. "Your father gave me Story Group," I said. "Liam Chen sold me your debt, and Gavin, your brother, is my deputy. You threw it all away." His scream tore through the rain, raw and anguished. but it faded as I turned away. My father's pride, Luke's trust, and my mother's journal had guided me here. For Daniel, I had carved a path no betrayal could touch. I opened my umbrella, the cemetery's silence enveloping me. "You never loved me," I said, not looking back. "You never saw my value. This is your end, Ethan, not mine." His sobs followed, but the wind carried them away. Cresthaven's elite would hear of this, their whispers sealing his exile. I walked toward the gate, my heart calm, and the weight of my past life lifted. Daniel's future was mine to shape, and Ethan was dust beneath my feet. Cresthaven's skyline gleamed through my office window at Solaris Technologies, a tapestry of steel and ambition bathed in the golden light of dawn. Once a crucible of my humiliation, the elite circle now whispered my name with reverence. Emily Stone, the architect of Skynet's downfall. This heir claimed Story Group and Genesis Capital's power. Claire's ruin was complete. Her plagiarism charges a scarlet letter in Cresthaven's unforgiving hierarchy, and her envy-driven schemes are a fading echo. Broken in the rain-soaked cemetery, Ethan was exiled, his pleas drowned by the elite's scorn. Yet, as I signed the Solaris expansion plan, it was not victory but peace that settled in my heart. A peace forged for my unborn son, Daniel, and the mother whose legacy I'd reclaimed. The weight of my past life, Ethan's betrayal, Daniel's voice siding with Claire as I drowned, had once crushed me. In that life, I had been blind, pouring my intellect into a man who saw only Claire's stolen light. Daniel's loss, deeper than any, had haunted me, my failure to shield him from Cresthaven's poison. In this reborn life, I had built a fortress for him, a legacy rooted in truth, not lies. The Solaris plan, sprawling across my desk, was more than a platform. It was a promise to guide Daniel through a world where strength, not betrayal, defined his path. My father entered, his face softened by pride, starkly contrasting the guilt he'd carried in my past life. "You've done it, Emily," he said, his voice warm. "Your mother would be smiling." He placed a worn leather journal beside me, my mother's, its pages filled with dreams for Genesis Capital. I had ignored it in my past life, consumed by Ethan's ambition. Now it was my compass. "She saw you as her successor," he said. "You've honored her." His words, rare in Cresthaven's cutthroat elite, mended a fracture I hadn't named. "We'll protect her dream, Dad," I said, my hand on his. For Daniel, too. Uncle Luke followed, his frail frame leaning on a cane, his eyes bright despite his illness. In my past life, his letters, found after his death, had revealed his silent support, clearing obstacles I never saw. Now he was here, his 30% share transfer a cornerstone of my power. "This came for you," he said, handing me my grandfather's journal, its cover embossed with the Genesis Capital crest. I opened it, my grandfather's bold script detailing the company's founding, my mother's role as its heart. "Luke said your mother's dream lives in you," his voice tinged with relief. "And your grandfather's fire." I traced the words, my throat tight. In my past life, I had let Genesis collapse, blind to its value. Now I was its steward, merging its legacy with Solaris. For Daniel, I would ensure it endured, a shield against Cresthaven's treachery. "Thank you, Uncle," I said, meeting his gaze. "I'll protect what they built." His weary but proud smile was a gift, tying me to the family I'd nearly lost. Their faith was my bedrock in Cresthaven, where alliances shifted like sand. The elite circle's narrative had shifted irrevocably. Whispers of Emily Stone, devourer of empires, filled boardrooms and galas, replacing the pity of my jilted days. Liam Chen, once Ethan's rival, now my ally, had sent a note. "Solaris sets the pace. Blaze Ventures follows." His respect, earned through my ruthlessness, underscored my place in Cresthaven's hierarchy. Claire's absence was a void, her disgrace a lesson in ambition's cost. Ethan, exiled, was a footnote, his name erased from the elite's ledgers. I stood crossing to the window, the city sprawling below. I had been a shadow in my past life, and my light dimmed for Ethan. Now I was the sun, casting Cresthaven in my glow. Daniel's future, secure through Solaris and Genesis, was my vow fulfilled. My mother's journal on my desk whispered, "Carry our light." I would for her, my grandfather, and the family I'd rebuilt. The pain of betrayal, Ethan's, Claire's, Daniel's, had forged me, but it no longer defined me. As the sun rose, painting the skyline gold, I felt the final tether to my past life snap. Cresthaven's elite circle, once my judge, now followed my lead. My feather and Luke stood beside me, their presence a quiet strength. For Daniel, I had turned ashes into empire, betrayal into triumph. Ethan was dust beneath my feet, Claire a memory, and I was free to build a world where my son would know only the light I carried, unyielding